had an early morning start and I got up at 4:30 in the morning. My destination was lock number 1 of the Trent-Severn Waterway. Welcome to our escapades. Ursula is the navigator, my name is Dieter and I'm the wheelman. Ursula was busy with other projects, so I was traveling alone. I was missing my navigator. No wonder I did not end up at lock number 1. I arrived at the Carrying Place Bridge, originally built in 1935. Upgrades and rebuilds were done in the 60s and 70s. Looking at the map, I may argue that this is the actual start of the waterway, unless you take the long way to the first lock. Along the way to lock number 1, I stopped in Trenton. It was not even 8 o'clock and I had time to spare. By 8:10 I was at lock number 1, Trenton. As I found out, the lock operation does not start before 9 AM. I had time to look around and read the historical information. Lock 2, Sydney. Building the waterway control dams created the opportunity to generate hydroelectricity. This is not the only one we're gonna see. Lock number 3, Glen. It is 8:40 and still too early to see the lock in operation. It is the largest single lock in the southern area. Interesting fact, locks number 1 to 18 were built between 1908 and 1915. Lock number 4, Ottawa. The waterway control dam is just beside the lock. It was 9:15 when I arrived at lock 5, Trent. Here the lock doors are manually operated. The V-shaped handle is rotated and the doors open or close. The doors are well balanced, but it does require a steady force. Why do I know? Well, I helped open one of the door locks. The fun part is walking in a circle for an excessive amount of time. It did make me dizzy. I was told to look up and yes, it did help. The boats arrive and the doors are closed. Once they're closed, the valve is opened and the water rushes out. It is quite a spectacle to watch. Lock 7, Glen. Now is a good time to talk about filling the lock. To bring the water up to the level, a valve opens and the water rushes horizontally into the lock at the bottom. When the water starts to flow, some minor turbulences show on the opposite side of the inflow. The lockmaster controls the amount of inflow depending on the type of vessel in the lock. When canoes or kayaks are in there, the valve is not fully opened. This reduces the turbulence. This is a houseboat and you can rent them. I don't know about the price, but they did look very cozy. For me it was time to go back to the campsite and enjoy a quiet evening and watch the millions of firebugs dance around. The next morning I parked at Lock 13, Campbellford. I paddled up the Trent to reach Lock 14. I came around a bend and noticed the lock in the distance. The lockmaster waited for me and I don't think the boaters were too excited about that. It took me about 5 minutes to catch up. When I left the lock, I told them I will not go to the next lock, but instead I will have a look around in the bay further up and will return here. When I returned to Lock 14, I tied up the canoe. The lockmaster told me to enter the lock. Another boat was approaching from below. The lower the water levels dropped, the more noise from the leaky seals of the door. Nevertheless, it is an interesting experience. Around this time of year, the water inflow into the waterway is low, and the goal is to preserve a level that keeps the hydro installations going and the lock systems operational. There is not much left for the water flow. I returned to the campsite. The forecast had rain, so I set up my sleeping quarters in the jeep. That was a good choice. I packed up, went to the covered picnic table in Campbellford and had my breakfast. On the way home, I stopped in Hastings to have a look at Lock 18. I had to visit Lock 21, the Peterborough Lift Lock. They opened in 1904. Remember when I said that locks number 1 to 18 were built between 1908 and 1915? The Peterborough lock was operational 5 years earlier. With a lift of 19.8 meters, this is the highest hydraulic lift lock in the world. It operates on a balance principle. A constant water pressure supports each ram through connecting pipes below ground. When extra water is let into the upper chamber, a connecting valve is opened and the heavier chamber automatically descends, forcing up the lower chamber to start a new cycle. Fascinating principle, but not as amazing as watching the huge chambers move up and down. I had to dash up to the top to see the boats exiting the lock. I visited the locks on the first 40 kilometers of the waterway, plus the Peterborough Lift Lock. The whole Trent-Severn Waterway is 386 kilometers long, so we still have a few places to see. The canoe season is short, so that will take us a while. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and find out when we hit the waterway again. However, we do have other trips planned ahead of that. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you out there.